Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please welcome your host, Eric Kales.
How's everybody doing? Yo, let me get a yo Philly. Nice, nice. Welcome back. We're so excited for this afternoon session. We got some really great stuff. How are those breakouts? Knock your socks off, right? Good. Guess what? You got a whole new set and some old ones from today coming again tomorrow, so there'll be a whole fresh set of options for you to choose from. Very, very exciting. So we've been enjoying our TED Talk style program called EO Speaks. Got another couple videos for you. Pay attention, because remember, we got a vote at the end. Our very first one, for this session, is Arnie from EO Nashville.
It's true. Since 2006, we've been paying our people to read. It started when my wife wanted me to get rid of a bunch of business books. She said, "Why don't you take these to work?" Took them in, put them on a shelf for other people to enjoy. But they just sat there. Then I thought, what if we pay people to read? We assigned each book a point value and paid $1 per point to read the books. In our book club, everyone chooses their own book and reports on what they've learned and how they're going to apply it to their lives. We create a system that tracks it all. Every book read and by whom. The people love it.
My favorite part about the book club is that it's employee-driven. It's what we want to read when we want to read it.
I like that it's an investment in me, and it's great to know I go to work at a place that wants me to be the best version of myself that I can be.
I love that it's so easy. All I have to do is walk downstairs and grab a book. Bingo, done.
As a manager, the best thing about book club is that it allows our team to operate from a common core of knowledge.
We all get into a room together and you may hear a perspective about a book that you didn't think you wanted to read, but now you do.
I'm not gonna lie, I love the money.
Why have we invested so much in this? Because we've seen that by reading books, it's made our people better. And when the people get better, the company gets better. It's the least expensive, most effective training we do. And everyone has a favorite book.
Switch, the compound effect.
Drive,
Outliers, The Dream Manager,
the myth of multitasking,
The Truth About Drug Companies,
Made to Stick.
Start with why.
Checklist Manifesto.
See the End First.
Book club is fun, and it works for us. So well, in fact, that I get asked all the time by other business owners, how can I do that? But our system was internal, and I couldn't share it with others. When it came time to upgrade our own system, we made it web-based. So now we can share this innovation with other companies. You can customize it for you and your business. You don't even have to pay people. You can incentivize however you want, or not at all. But we've done the hard work and built a system every business can benefit from. Take a look at Better Book Club and give your team a chance to discover their favorite book. So that's a quick look at Better Book Club, how it's worked for us, how it might work for you. If you want to know more, check out betterbookclub.com.
The longer I'm in business, the more I realize you can make a business out of anything. Great job, Arnie. Thank you. And don't forget, the app is where we're going to be voting tomorrow. So keep in mind your favorites, and we're going to vote on the app and give the winner of the EO Speaks a nice prize. So you see how Arnie's company found something that they thought was something that they could really utilize. He jumped at an opportunity. He made something out of it. Back to our boy Ben Franklin, Philadelphia's favorite son. He was also a very similar guy. You know, one of the stories I heard recently was pretty cool. You see these stones that make up the street? What are they called? Cobblestones. And you think from hanging out in Old City, Philadelphia, that there's a lot of cobblestones in Philadelphia, right? Not one cobblestone in the whole city. You know what those things are? They're called Belgian block. And what happened was Ben Franklin came upon this in a very interesting way. Back in the old day, Ben Franklin lived on this very street we're on now, Market Street, and back in the day it was called High Street. So he lived down at 4th and High. And in those days, the street was dust, dirt. And Ben Franklin, being kind of a neat guy, said, you know, I'm so annoyed. Every day I come out of my house and everything's dirty. So he gets a guy, and he says to the guy, every day I want you to come to my house, and I want you to sweep up all this dust, and then I want you to put water on the whole thing so that it keeps it as dust-free as possible during the course of the day. Well, all of his neighbors see this, and they're like, hey, Ben, hook me up. I want that guy to help me out, too. Let's keep the whole street nice and clean. Before you know it, he's got guys doing everybody's street in Old City, Philadelphia. Well, that's a lot of labor, and it's obviously a lot of work. And one day, he's walking down by the Delaware River, and he sees all of these stones just laying on the side of or on the banks of the river. So he's like, what are those things? Well, the merchants that used to come from Europe and back and forth used these blocks for ballast in the bottom of the boats when they came from Europe to the colonies. Well, what happened was, as soon as they delivered their stuff, they wanted to haul ass back to Europe so they can get another load and bring it to the colonies to sell. So they took the ballast, which is heavy, they threw it out on the side of the river, made their ships lighter, they were able to go faster back. Well, there's all these rocks laying, so Ben Franklin says, hey, we could use these. Takes the blocks, gets the same guy that used to do the dusting. Now they're installing all of these Belgian block on the streets. We never have to dust it or clean it up again, and that's where Ben Franklin created the City of Philadelphia's Streets Department. Once again, finding an opportunity and making something out of it. And that leads into our next EO Speaks video. Our next EO Speaks video is presented from Mark Rubin from EO Chesapeake Bay.
Business visualization, a way to see how businesses work. Every business owner would like to be able to see how to make more money with less time and with less work. But business isn't complicated. The problem is that it's hard to see when they're broken or inefficient or out of tune. Can you see how it works? If you have a way to see all the parts of your business in one place, you will know where it is broken and where to put your energy. But if you can visualize your business, how can you see all the parts of your business so you can see how to make it more efficient? This is how. You can build a scale model of your business. This picture is part of a scale model that shows how an example business works. The inefficient functions are in red, and the functions that are working well are in green. This way it is simple to see where it needs to be improved. Learn more. Do you want to learn how to create a complete visual model of the engine in your business so you can see how to make more money with less time and with less work? Just go to this website to get started. businessvisualization.com.
Cool stuff, cool stuff. So one quick reminder before we go on. is that for those of you staying through the weekend, there are still a couple of tickets left for Saturday's Phillies game in that super box that we got. If you're interested, see Paul Alford, the gentleman that did last night's social event. By the way, did you guys enjoy that social event that Paul Alford put together? Give him a big round of applause. Great job, Paul. So there's a couple tickets left. First come, first serve. It's going to be a great weather, and we're sitting in a super box with some behind-the-scenes tours and stuff like that. So at this point, I would like to introduce Dana Bradley. For those of you who don't know Dana, he's our Eastern Regional President or Director. Dana was instrumental in making sure that we had all the resources that we needed to make sure that NERV 2014 came off. Great effort in helping spread the word, promoting it, and obviously getting all you folks to come. So I'm just giving a big shout out and a thank you to Dana for supporting us on NERV 2014. It's always nice to get support from the region. This is our region's annual conference. So once again, big round of applause for Dana Bradley.
Thank you. EO, what's up? Who's having a great day? Thanks. Eric, don't go anywhere. Stay up here with me for a sec, if you would, please, if you don't mind. A lot of thank yous need to happen right now, so I want to thank all of our EO Global staff that's here with us. Thanks for your commitment, your dedication, your support. You guys are awesome. I want to thank the NERV committee, all the leaders in this organization. This NERV committee's done a phenomenal job. Eric's assembled a great committee. This would not be what it is without these volunteers. Katie, thank you for all your preparation in advance. You're awesome. You've done a great job. Really, really amazing. And continue to raise the bar even over what we did last year in Charlotte. Joe, you've got your work cut out for you in Nashville. But Eric, I want to thank you. In fact, the East Region wants to do something more than thank you. We want to buy you a drink. So everybody here has contributed on behalf of the entire East Region. I'm buying you a drink of bourbon.
Thank you. My favorite.
All right? Thanks for all your hard work. Awesome job. Great so far. So yes, I'm Dana Bradley. I'm from EO Charlotte. I am an EO member. I do not work for Global. I am an EO member. So we've got some slides. I want to talk to you guys just a little bit about Path to Leadership and what is the Regional Council. So a lot of people don't even know what the Regional Council is. So we're all members. You can see from this slide, we're all in a forum. Some of us step up and take the first step in leadership within our organization and become part of a forum and then become a moderator of a forum. From there, you have the opportunity to go on to your local chapter board. These are all volunteers that are putting together the programming for your chapter. Ultimately, why? To add value to your membership. For the time you put in, for the money you pay, we want you to have value. We want you to have some take-home value. We want your businesses to grow. We want you to lead a more fulfilling life. From there, you have the opportunity to move on outside of your local chapter leadership and move into regional leadership on something that's called the Regional Council. So I am your regional director for our Regional Council. This is a group of volunteers from a number of different chapters, and it was created really to bring the resources closer to you, the members, at your local chapter. And when I say resources, what do I mean? Well, two things. One, knowledge. There are a lot of folks here that have been around for a long time that have a ton of knowledge that they can share. One of our core tenets is experience share, so why not bring that knowledge from the entire region to the chapter level so that we all can benefit from it. And the second thing as far as resources, dollars. So our Regional Council has over $200,000 a year that we spend to benefit the region, to add value to your membership. We spend it on things like NERV, Leadership Day prior to NERV, moderator summits, president meetings, AFS, Advanced Forum Series, multi-chapter learning events, learning tours from different speakers, membership recruiting. All these things go into our budget. None of us are paid. You should know that. We are all volunteers. But this all goes into a budget to provide value to you. So we hope you see it. But there's a huge opportunity here to be a part of something in leadership. If you really want to try out your leadership skills, if you want to hone your leadership skills, maybe you can do it at your business, but what happens if they don't follow you? Well, you can fire them. But try working with a bunch of volunteers. Try inspiring and leading a bunch of people that are high Ds, type A, just like you. You will really perfect your skills and get a lot out of it. So there's an opportunity to hone your leadership skills, to give back, to make a difference, but to learn and grow at a different level. and also to create friendships. My leadership experience at the board level as well as the regional level, I've made awesome friendships. I've learned so much from folks that I probably never would have had the opportunity to meet and mingle with had I not stepped out of my comfort zone and become a local or regional leader. It's been almost like a second or third form experience for me at each different level. So I encourage you to step up and take leadership to the next level. So to me, what Brian said earlier about level 4, success to significance, is something I want to thank you for. My leadership experience has come from working with you. I started a charity in Charlotte called the Patriot Charities. We raise money to support wounded warriors in the Carolinas. Why am I passionate about that? Because I like freedom. Anybody else here like freedom? Raise your hand if you like freedom. The freedom I have, my children have, we all have, much of that is because of the commitment and the sacrifices made by the men and women of our armed forces, some paying the ultimate sacrifice. So through the Patriot Charities, through my EO experience, I've been able to lead this organization, a board of 16 volunteers, to raise over $1 million. We've put 4 wounded warriors in homes and their families in the Carolinas. Awesome experience. To help a triple amputee who didn't know me whatsoever move into a home with his 2 young children and wife and give him a hand up. Just a hand up. He's got a mortgage. He's got to cover some of that. We just got him started. We covered 75% of the cost of the home. We've done that now 4 times. This year alone, we've also been able to give back service dogs. 4 PTSD warriors that needed service dog help. We've been able to give them those dogs. And we're doing a lot of things in Charlotte. But you know what? I wouldn't be here today talking about it, bragging about it, excited about it, if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for my leadership experience. So thank you. So what exactly is the East Region? Some of us are scratching our heads. Who are we? We're 18 chapters. We have recently launched Chesapeake Bay. Anyone here from Chesapeake Bay? Congratulations, guys. This is the 18th chapter. We had 8 Rockstar chapters last year, and we're about 1,600 members. About 250 new members have joined our region this year. And shortly, we will be launching our 19th chapter, EO Brooklyn. And I know you guys are out there. Congratulations, EO Brooklyn. Anybody that's here with us today that served on your local chapter board, please stand if you would. If you are currently on your local chapter board, also please stand. Anybody who is currently on the regional council, has served on the regional council, please stand. Look around. These are your member leaders. Give them a warm round of applause. I'd ask the current regional council to stay standing. Everybody else can sit. If you're on the current regional council, please stand. These are the folks that are on our regional council now. For the next year, they actually take office July 1st, but for the next year, they'll be working for you to add value to your membership. These are representatives from many of our chapters throughout the region. If you'd like to get involved at the leadership level, the prerequisite is that you've done it at your local chapter level or have gotten involved in a committee globally. So please see me. I'd be happy to chat with you about that. Get involved in EO leadership. It's awesome. And it's very, very rewarding and will help you to impact the lives of many. So let me introduce Randy, who's our next speaker. We're excited to hear from Randy Jones. Randy is the author of the bestseller, The Richest Man in Town. He's managing director of Patriarch Partners, the holding company that owns 75 companies, including Rand McNally, MD Helicopters, Stila Cosmetics, and Spiegel Catalogs. He's the former publisher of Esquire magazine, also the sharpest dressed man in the room. You'll see that when he comes up. And was the youngest publisher of a magazine in history when he took the helm at 29 years of age of Esquire. He's also the founder of Worth Magazine, the financial lifestyle magazine for active wealthy investors, and the author of the greatest stock picks of all time. He serves as the voice of the ABC radio program, A Minute's Worth, which is syndicated to 4,600 ABC radio affiliates, and is a frequent public speaker on the interests of lifestyles and investment habits of America's wealthy. In addition, Mr. Jones has been a frequent commentator on numerous television shows, including The Today Show, CNBC, CNN, and Fox News. Proud graduate of the University of Georgia College of Journalism, Mr. Jones was honored to receive the college's John E. Dewey Award as the Outstanding Alumnus of the Year, and in 2002 was awarded the Alumni Merit Award, the highest honor award to an alumnus of the University of Georgia. Randy calls Carrollton, Georgia home, but now lives in New York City, married to his childhood sweetheart, and has 3 sons, Cole, Chance, and Charles. Please help me in giving a warm EO Nerve welcome to Mr. Randy Jones.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you. Boy, I just got here a couple of hours ago and I'm beginning to regret the fact that I spent so many years in YPO. I should have been as a serial entrepreneur, I should have been an EOer. I guess I'm just too damn old, but I'll tell you, I am awfully. Okay, all right, sign me up. All right, deal. Dana, thank you for that very, very kind introduction. Perhaps the only thing he didn't say in that overly effusive introduction was that, and maybe he didn't know this, but I love country music. Who loves country music? I love it because it tells a story. I always find that country music has these real-life truths, these essential truths, as I call them, that have resonance with me. You know, like, I liked you better before I knew you so well. Or, she got the gold mine, I got the shaft. Or my current favorite, and the reason, Dana, I have this on today is you can't hide redneck in a 3-piece suit. Though I've been in New York for the last 30 years of my career, I have tried like hell to hide redneck behind a 3-piece suit, and some days I'm more successful than others. But these country music truths excite me because they do tell a real-life story. And as we talk about truths today, let me ask a few of you for some truths. How many of you, you're EOers, right? So how many of you already are the richest man or woman in your town? We got some work to do, ladies and gentlemen. How many of you have an interest or a desire in becoming the richest person in your town? Okay. Then we can have some fun today. Let's face it. Either secretly or often overtly, I find that most everybody wants or has this desire to be a great self-made success. And a few years ago, I set out to find the truth behind self-made success, behind the concept that we in America can do some things that most people in other countries simply cannot. I wanted to see if the American dream, no matter how you define it, was alive and well, or was it dead? Probably you saw last week that CNN and Orc International did a study, and it said that 59% of all Americans today believe that the American dream is dead. I found that so incredibly sad. 63% of Americans say that they don't believe their children will have the opportunities that their parents did. I found that even sadder. And this is happening just at the time that the stock market is nearing 17,000. So I find this unfathomable to understand. And I had a similar experience back in 2009 when I set out on this journey to figure out whether the American dream was dead or alive. It was a tough time in the country. You all remember it well. We lost $7 trillion of wealth in a few-month period. And people were feeling pretty sad, pretty forlorn, and not particularly ebullient about the status of the American dream, no matter how you define it. In fact, the comedian George Carlin at the time said about the American dream, they call it the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. So, by the way, the joke ended up being on the late George Carlin because he died a very rich man worth more than $100 million. But he was indicative of a certain sentiment that was out there then, and I think is a sentiment that obviously, according to CNN, is out there today. So I wanted, back 5 years ago now, to sort of figure out this whole concept of the American dream. And I felt the greatest way to do that was to ask 100 of the most successful self-made people in this country how they got there. In other words, what is the status of self-made success? How do you reach the American dream? And is it alive and well and still attainable? Now, when people see the title of my book, the first question they ask is, well, who is the richest man in town? Well, obviously that depends on the town. But the second question invariably is, why did you do this? You know, what was it that drove you to do this? And I think it harkens back to being a little boy in Carrollton, Georgia. I always was fascinated by the rich, in particular those entrepreneurs, those individuals in our town who were employing people, who were making a difference in that town. And that stuck with me my entire life. So after I sold my last company, I took 2 years off, what my wife calls my midlife crisis, to travel the country and to personally interview the richest self-made man or woman in 100 American towns. But the idea for the book actually grew out of a need, or I often say a panic attack that I had about a decade ago when we were trying to come up with an idea for our 10th anniversary issue of Worth magazine. You know, keep in mind this was when the internet was starting to have a huge effect on the publishing models out there and really making a big difference in terms of the revenue of magazines. And so we had to work harder than ever to try to get people's attention. So I wanted a 10th anniversary list, you know, a rich list, since we were a magazine about the now much maligned top 1% of the demographic pyramid, but I couldn't come up with an idea. Neither could my team. And you know, Forbes had the Forbes 400, and I always thought that too often the rich list, if you will, look at individuals through either the lens of Hollywood or Wall Street or Silicon Valley. And they forget this wide country out there where success takes place every single day. So I go home to my hometown of Carrollton, Georgia that weekend, a bit forlorn and hoping for a little inspiration as to what we could possibly do to celebrate Worth's 10th anniversary. And I go to lunch at the country club with my then 14-year-old nephew, and we're sitting there and we're having a pleasant time, and he looks at me all of a sudden, he goes, "Uncle Randy, you see that man right there? That's the richest man in town." Well, of course I knew who he was. I grew up with him. I hated his guts. He tried to steal my girlfriend, who is now my wife. So I got the girl, he got the gold mine. But it was a good trade, let me tell you what. But I knew at that moment that I had my idea. I had my list, the richest person in town. Because we could go then to the 100 towns in America, any towns we choose, because every town has one, right? And I would venture to say that if you think about it, everyone in here knows immediately who is the richest person in your town. So I go back to New York on Monday morning brimming with enthusiasm, and I'm saying to my editorial team, I've got it, I've come up with this great idea. They did love it. They agreed with me that it was an opportunity to paint perhaps the most truly representative portrait of wealth in America. One that didn't just look at wealth through the lens of 400 people in the country that tended to be like a U. So East Coast down to Texas and up the West Coast, and no one in between. So we decided that we would go from New York to Natchez and find out who was the richest self-made person, no, the richest person in each of those towns. And we did. So the team went out all enthusiastic. We uncovered these individuals, and we ended up doing a very exciting issue that was our bestseller ever. It was a huge, gargantuan financial success for us. And it was a huge, huge failure as I looked at it. Simply because as I read that magazine as a reader, I realized that, yeah, we went out there, we found out who these folks were. We did a great research project. We called every business editor, the president of the local bank. You know, we did a great job of finding out who was the richest person in 100 American towns. But we added absolutely no insight, no lessons learned from these extraordinary people. And also, we did not distinguish between inherited wealth and self-made wealth. And keep in mind, I've always had a bias toward self-made wealth. So after that, I vowed that I would right that wrong one day. And so after I sold my film company, I set out on this journey across the country because I really did want to know what it felt like, smelled like, tasted like to understand success in Amherst, Massachusetts, or Anchorage, Alaska, in Fort Lauderdale or Fort Worth, in Cleveland, Ohio, or Little Cleveland, Tennessee, or even in my hometown of Carrollton, Georgia. And what a journey it was. I got to know some of the most spectacular individuals on the planet. It was probably the best education of my entire life. And I'm enormously, enormously grateful for the time that all of these great American wealth creators gave me in this process. So once you sort of understand that this is the journey that I've taken, then often the question people say is, well, you know, what'd you learn? Well, I learned a whole lot, as you will see. But that, as we say in the biz, is a tease. So, you know, this is the question everyone asks, but again, that depends on the town. But let me give you a collective glimpse of the richest man in town. He owns the largest electronic amplification company in the U.S. and calls Jimmy Buffett his best friend. He's the best-selling horror writer of all time. He and his brother are the creators of Nintendo's Guitar Hero. She created the American Doll Company in Madison, Wisconsin. He's the founder of Home Depot. He's the guy who brought NASCAR to Wall Street. He runs the largest wheelchair manufacturing company in the world. He's currently building a mansion in Cleveland, Tennessee that's an exact replica of the Beverly Hills Hillbilly mansion that he grew up wanting his entire life. I love that guy. He turned log cabins into luxury homes. He has a yacht called Limitless because he believes that's his possibility. From Columbus, Ohio, he created the Subway sandwich. He sold his pet food company for $2.3 billion to Procter & Gamble. He learned everything he knows from Tom Watson of IBM about how to sell product. He's created the surveillance system that protects the Queen of England at Buckingham Palace. He turned trash into cash. He's the rich roaster of premium coffees in Vermont. He owns This Trucker's Paradise. He started the Miss Hawaiian Tropics beauty pageant. She is an avowed environmentalist and the founder of Burt's Bees. They started a little search engine. This guy started creating shoes with a waffle iron at home and turned it into the largest performance apparel company in the world. He saved the James Bond franchise. He's a crazy guy who flies these contraptions and is the founder of perhaps the most recognized antivirus software in the world. He personally owns the Magna Carta, and he calls Donald Trump his best friend. I question his judgment. But he was still a good man. Now, the interesting thing about these great American wealth creators is that there is not a Rockefeller, a Vanderbilt, or a Kennedy among them. And the poorest one among them was worth $100 million. You got $100 million in Carrollton, Georgia, where I'm from, ladies and gentlemen, you're rich. And what I loved was that not a single one of them has a criminal record, at least not yet. I must say I am a little worried about John McAfee of McAfee Antivirus, if you've sort of watched the news with him of late, but so far we're still clean. Now, the question that I get all the time when people hear about this journey is, what's the greatest commonality? Well, the real truth is there are exactly 12 of them. That's the subtitle of the book, The 12 Commandments of Wealth. But I'm not going to take you through all 12 today because I've got to give you a reason to go get a Kindle version of it. But the most astonishing thing I learned about these guys is almost to a person, they don't set goals. Now, how contrarian is that? I mean, our whole lives we're taught that you must begin with the end in mind. How many self-help books have you read? You've got to have that vision so you know what you're marching toward. The interesting thing is that RMITs, as I call them, believe, like Charlie Cawley told me, the richest man in Delaware, life by the inch is a cinch, life by the yard is hard. They really believe that it's all about incremental daily improvement. And that really kind of shocked me. The other thing that shocked me was that they said, hey, Randy, it was never about the money. I never set out to get rich. And I thought, yeah, right. Here you are sitting atop a fortune of $100 million or more. And that's easy to say now, but you always wanted to be rich. Come on, tell me the truth. And after about the 25th interview of people saying the same thing, I began to believe that it was, in fact, true. That was not the intention. Did they want to be successful? Yes. Did they want to make a difference in the world? Yes. Did they want their family to have the kind of lifestyle that they had dreamed of? Yes. Did they want to have a better life than they had experienced growing up? Yes. But the goal of setting out to simply be rich was not something that they would cotton to at all. Now, the lesson that I learned in the process, though, that was not the most astonishing, but was the most powerful, was that all of these great American wealth creators knew something that seems so simple, and yet it's so powerful. And that is, they know themselves. As this Chinese wise man said, knowing others is intelligence, knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength, mastering yourself is true power. These richest men and women in town had true power because they really did understand themselves. They understood what they were uniquely good at, and equally as important, what they weren't. So, let me ask you this. How many of you were told when you were growing up, by your parents or people who loved you, you can be, this is America, you can be anything you want to be? Show of hands. How many of you tell your children that they can be anything they want to be? Okay. Well, the richest men in town believe that's a big, fat lie. They believe that you cannot be anything you want to be or anything you dream of being, but you can be so much more of what you innately, intrinsically, instinctively are. And understanding that and making the most of that was the single greatest key to their success. So learning that alone just kind of amazed me. It's what I call in the book, finding your perfect pitch. The thing you do most innately, instinctively, intrinsically well. So that you are not like Sisyphus, pushing the boulder up the mountain constantly, working your ass off. You're working hard, only to see it cascade back down again. The people who have been the most successful are those who figured out what puts the wind to their back. Eric and I were talking earlier, and he was asking me about the Esquire days, and you know, Esquire was my first turnaround, and it was in my early 20s, and perhaps, you know, I did not know better, but I look back on that time today in my own life, and I know that owning Esquire was my perfect pitch. It was the first magazine I'd ever subscribed to at 13 years of age with my lawn cutting money in small town Georgia. It gave me a window into a more sophisticated, more erudite world. It taught me about Dos Passos and Hemingway and the great writers of our time. And it also, once in a while, told me how to properly stuff a pocket square. I kind of liked it. So we had a good run with that magazine. We bought it when it was losing $2 million, and we bought it for $2 million, and we sold it for $82 million 7.5 years later. So in some ways, that was my perfect pitch at that particular stage in my life. But I didn't realize it or think about it at all until I was doing this project. It's what Jim Haslam, the richest man in Knoxville, Tennessee, said to me. He said, Randy, you got to find out what is right about you. If you think you have to go to work every day, you've got the wrong job, right? And he said, I know that there are very few things that I can do and do them extraordinarily well, but that's exactly what I focused on my entire life. Warren Buffett says I was wired at birth to allocate capital. $60 billion later, I would say he's proved the precept. But you know, one of the things I did when I visited Pat McGovern, who was the richest man in New Hampshire, and just passed away, bless his heart, a great man. But he took me to MIT, to the neuro labs there. And they sat me down and talked about how we are all wired. We are hardwired with certain abilities, innate abilities, and finding those abilities that we are personally hardwired for is the most important and critical aspect of finding true success. I went to Providence, Rhode Island, and I met Jonathan Nelson, the richest man in Providence and in fact the entire state. A private equity prince who has invested in a number of major companies, including, at the time, the largest LBO in history at $51 billion. But he told me about the power of understanding your own perfect pitch. When he was a freshman at Brown University, he said, I decided to take a course in Beethoven. He thought, well, I'll learn something about classical music. It'll probably be reasonably easy, and there'll probably be some good-looking women in that class. So we know what his real motivation was. So he goes to the class the first day, and he sits there, and you know, he already has his eye on this very attractive woman sitting in front of him, and the professor comes in, and he hits a note on the piano. And he asks the room, what is that note? Well, he noticed the girl that he had his eye on raised her hand and said C sharp. He looks at her and he says, how do you know that? And she said, I have perfect pitch. Well, he knew at that moment. He He said it was the most important lesson he learned throughout college. And it's the lesson that has helped him be the success that he has become. He learned the power of relative skill differences. He knew then that everyone who had raised their hand in that room had an ability, they had a talent, innate as it was, that he could never replicate. No matter how hard he worked, no matter how much he wanted it, no matter how much he believed in himself, perfect pitch is one of those God-given talents. So he did okay in the Beethoven class. He got a girlfriend out of it, and he got the biggest lesson of his career, he says. In fact, he told me how he used it once they bought MGM a few years ago. And the big question was, how would they save the James Bond franchise? Or how would they make more money from the James Bond franchise? Because there'd been 21 successful flicks, but there was a real question about how do you take the James Bond franchise into the modern age? And so he said that what served him so well when he bought MGM was that he sat down with Barbara Broccoli, who was Cubby Broccoli's daughter. And Barbara was, what he said, a genius who had the perfect pitch for Bond. She had chosen every Bond actor so far, and every one of them had been a success. There had not been 21 very successful flicks. And she was saying to him, I think I'm going to go with Daniel Craig. Now, at the time, Daniel Craig was little known. He was blonde, and he was, for a Bond figure, he was short. So Jonathan Nelson thought for a moment. She said, 21 successes, but I'm really concerned about this because my entire investment, in many ways, rests on the success of the Bond franchise. Well, you know how the story ended. Barbara chose Daniel Craig. 3 films later, the biggest Bond films in history. So what he says is that his perfect pitch, Jonathan Nelson's perfect pitch, is understanding the perfect pitch of the people running the businesses that he invests in. And that's the thing he looks at most when he's evaluating any business and any entrepreneur running a business. Stephen King, you've probably read his books. He said to me, there was nothing else I was made to do. I always loved writing. It's what came easy to me. It's what I did, and I can't imagine doing anything else. And then I had a ball down in Meridian, Mississippi with Hartley Peavey, the founder of Peavey Electronics. He said to me, in 1957, he heard Bo Diddley play. And he said, more than anything in life, I wanted to be able to play the guitar like Bo Diddley. And he said, I tried. And he said, one day I had to have an intervention with myself because he said, no matter how hard I tried, I wasn't very good. But simultaneously, he had been building amplifiers to try to make himself sound better. And he was pretty damn good at building electronic amplifiers. So finally, he realized what he was good at versus what he wasn't. While he never totally gave up the guitar, he focused exclusively on building the best electronic amplifier systems to help the best guitar players sound even better. $400 million later, and the richest man in Meridian, Mississippi, I'd say, he figured out his perfect pitch. So it's kind of like what the late Maya Angelou, may she rest in peace, was so famous for saying, you can only become truly accomplished at something you love. Don't make money your goal. Instead, pursue the things you love doing and then do them so well that people can't take their eyes off of you. And I thought that's what a great entrepreneur does. So is the American dream dead or alive? I don't agree with that poll out from CNN last week. I believe it's very much alive and well, and I think it seems to me like everybody in this room is a testament to the fact that it is there. And I hope we can promulgate that whole theory a little more, and that the next time there's a big survey about the American dream, that the numbers will be significantly different. It's sort of like what Clay Mathiel, the richest man in Dayton, Ohio, said to me when I asked him, I said, what is self-made success to you, Clay? And he said, paraphrasing Ralph Waldo Emerson, to laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. That is to have succeeded. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's precisely what I wish for all of you. And I'd love to answer any questions you might have about this great journey that I took and that I'm now ready to embark upon again to do The Richest Woman in Town. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you raise your hands, the mic will come
questions?
to you.
Any questions? Josh Kopelman, the venture capitalist. Keep in mind, self-made. And it was this was 2009 too. Josh Kopelman had sold just shortly before that half.com to eBay, as you might remember. Yes, sir.
So did you grow up poor, and were you looking through that window of rich people in your town as an aspirational point of view? And were their lives so different than yours growing up?
No. Not rich, but not poor. My father was a clothing manufacturer, and we were middle class. I would say. I never wanted for anything. My brothers and I, we all went to college, didn't have to work through college. I mean, we did work through college, but that was for our money. We were, we had everything we could possibly want. But I was fascinated watching my dad's business, the clothing manufacturing business, go through its highs and its lows. He had 5 plants in the Southeast, and none of them are there today. All of those jobs just, gone overseas. Fortunately, after he sold the company, but nevertheless, they're no longer there. So, and my father-in-law was probably the second richest man in my town, and to me seemed like the richest guy in town. And he was, he owned an independent insurance agency. But he was a great investor. He brought cable television to Western Georgia. So he was a serial entrepreneur. He was always developing something. Started a bank, and when everyone said, Little Carrollton, Georgia doesn't need a 4th bank, he brought a 4th bank there, then ultimately sold it to what is now Citizens and Trust, and made a fortune in the process. So I did grow up being very much enamored by my father-in-law, because I would go, my wife was always late. My wife now, when she was my girlfriend, she was always late. So I'd be waiting for her to come down the stairs, and Mr. Cole and I would get in these great business conversations. And I was always fascinated by how people went out there, and by dint of their own drive and determination and smarts, created something often out of what seemed like nothing. Yes, sir.
In your journey of interviewing all of these great, successful people, what were the 1 or 2 things that really resonated out of that entire journey of interviewing these great people?
That most of them had never been very reflective on their career. When I set up these interviews, it was kind of interesting, because often they did it kind of begrudgingly, and only after I had said, Now, I had written a book called The Greatest CEOs of All Time, The Greatest Stock Picks of All Time, and so I sent these books to them so they knew that I was a legitimate author, right? And at the time I was, the owner and editor-in-chief of Esquire, of Worth. So they took my call, let me say that. But many times they would say, you got 30 minutes. So, I'd fly to, Meridian, Mississippi for 30 minutes. But it would end up being 4 hours. So when I started asking them the questions about this success, about how they did it, it was, for many of them, like a therapy session. It was the first time that they had really been reflective on their career because they were plotters, not strategic planners. Remember I said they don't set goals, so they're always looking for what needs to be done today, much more so than what's going to happen 5 years from now. So they were just doing what they felt was important every day, and there was never much time in their lives to really think about it. And they kind of enjoyed it. So that half hour would end up being 4 hours, and sometimes I'd be staying overnight and invited to their house for dinner. And it was, like I said, for them it was kind of a therapy session. So the fact that they'd never really thought about their success that much, I found really, really fascinating. I found most of them to be true American heroes. Were they proud of their success? Yes. They were more proud of what their children were doing. They always wanted to talk about their kids or their grandkids more than themselves. And there were a few folks who were tough. Don't get me wrong, but by and large, I was surprised that I truly liked so many of them. Yes, sir.
Somebody has a microphone, I think.
I can hear you, and I'll repeat it.
Generational differences. So let's say I'm talking to Sergey or whoever who are younger versus the folks who are in their 70s or 80s.
Right. Generational differences. They were significant. Obviously, the average or the median age for when they became the self-made richest person in town was 51 years of age for these 100 individuals. The average age was early 60s. So Josh Kopelman, was 31 at the time that I interviewed him. Sergey was late 20s. So they are differences, and the technology entrepreneurs were significantly different because they did expect to have wealth and success much, much sooner, or they expected that their dream would come true much, much sooner, whereas the older people were much more happy, I would say, with the fact that it came when it came. And as I said, they weren't setting goals, so they weren't pushing for something that was unattainable or something that they only could dream of. But yeah, the younger folks were different. Yes, sir.
I appreciate that you focused on the self-made. How about their children and their second generations with dealing with the entitlement that these 100 millionaire second generations will deal with?
Yeah, they're worried about it. And frankly, so am I for so many of these families. But I will say that in most cases, they have decided that inheritance is not something that they are big believers in. So like Warren Buffett has done with his children, given them enough to be able to do something exciting, but not enough that they don't have to work. That's the philosophy that most of these richest men or richest women in town have, is that they want their children to have a better life than they had, but at the same time, they don't want to rob them of their ambition or their success or their self-esteem. Because, let's face it, the self-esteem is greater when you have been the creator of the magic as opposed to simply the receiver of that magic. Yes, sir.
First of all, I just want to say I've been wearing suits for 20 years, and I still don't know how to make a pocket square look like that. So I'm learning a lot today. I'm curious about the entrepreneurs that you met, and Gladwell talks about this in his latest book about, was there, out of all of them, a common theme? I know they don't set goals, but that they thought that they could do it, that they were able to advocate for themselves in a way that maybe other people weren't. And I'd love if you could talk to that a little bit about, you always hear that somebody's a visionary, that everybody said no and he said yes and he pushed through it, and just that, that crowd saying no and them saying yes and being able to push through those times to be able to make
Oh, absolutely. There's a chapter in the book called Fail to Succeed. And it's really true that I take that back. Phil Ruffin of Wichita, Kansas told me he'd never failed at anything. Now, he is a billionaire and very proud of it. Very, very proud of it. But most of the folks were really very open about how many failures they'd had along the way and the lessons they learned from that. And very happy to chat about it. So yes, there were numerous examples in the book of where individuals had to push forward or had to overcome, in many cases near bankruptcy or bankruptcy. I think there were, out of the 100, there were 7 who had a personal bankruptcy. Yes, sir.
I've got a two-part question, actually. First of all, what was the dominant industry, or was there a dominant industry of these successes? And the second is, when we come to this group, we find out that people are making money doing some very odd things sometimes. And I'm curious, what was the oddest the oddest product or the oddest service or whatever it was that made them the millions?
Yeah, it was, when I was giving you a glimpse of the collective richest man in town, Bruton Smith in Charlotte, North Carolina, racetrack guy, one of the 7 who had personal bankruptcy and is now a billionaire. The oddest, though, two-part question. There was not a dominant industry. There was a lot of manufacturing. I mean, it was everything from timber to technology. You've got Carl Icahn, an activist investor in New York, but very few of the Wall Street types. You have a few technology types like Larry Ellison or the founders of Google. But, I'd say if there was a dominant one, it would have been real estate development. Oil was pretty strong as well. But the oddest, what was the oddest? Probably for me anyway, the oddest was Pleasant Rowland in Madison, Wisconsin, and the American Doll Company, that you could take a doll and marry dolls and historical figures, and somehow, every little girl in the world would want them. But that was probably the strangest.
Hi.
All the way in the back. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. There were, a few immigrant Americans. They were all Americans, obviously, all citizens of the United States. Min Kao, who founded Garmin, as an example, in Kansas City. But most of them were what I would call the rooted, responsible, restless rich. They were good old American folks with good American work ethic, by and large. Now, what was the second part of the question? I'm not good with two-part questions.
If not money, did you find something consistent that drove them?
Oh, yeah. simply the desire to make certain that their business worked, that every day it was a little better than the day before was the driving force. Now, obviously, in some cases, it's never just one thing. I mean, obviously, if they had failed before, they didn't want to fail again. They had, in most cases, had learned from those failures and wanted to make certain that sure as heck didn't happen again. But they weren't. But they sure as heck weren't scared of failure either. They were, often able to risk it all. Yes, sir.
Any dirt on anyone?
Well, have you followed the whole John McAfee thing? Well, I guess, yes. Harold Simmons of Dallas, Texas, was the rudest son of a gun ever. And does anybody know him well? I mean, he's no longer with us, but is he anybody's friend? And there was, and I've got to say that Pleasant Roland in Madison, Wisconsin wasn't very nice after I'd flown all the way there. And so the shortest sentence in the book is 2 words, and I wrote pleasant isn't, period. So, but by and large, I've stayed in touch with many of these folks. In fact, I often get the question, you wrote The Richest Man in Town? How much did you hit him up for? And I'm happy to say I haven't hit any of them up for an investment heretofore. But I have people all the time calling me, trying to get me to introduce them to one of them. But which I've also made a point of not doing, because that would just be overstepping my bounds. Yes, sir.
Was there a common inflection point for them? Like these 100 people, there was the aha or the breakthrough, or was there a commonality in what went from a decent idea to a mega idea, or their business went from slightly successful to mega successful?
No, I wouldn't say there were many aha moments. There were aha moments in terms of them recognizing that they had finally hit on something that was right for them. Whether it was Michael Dell, in his college dorm room, or whether it was Hartley Peavy trying his best to play a guitar and not being able to. There were personal aha moments, certainly. But I wouldn't say that there was an inflection point where they said, hey, this is going to work. In fact, in most cases, people would say to me, I sort of looked back and realized, okay, I can afford a new house. Or I can write that check for my kid to go to college, and I thought that might be a difficult thing to do. But not one common inflection point. It was different for everyone, obviously. Yes, ma'am.
I really would love to hear about the gentleman who is building the Clampett Mansion in Tennessee and what his business is.
His name is Alan Jones. I call him Brother Alan. He is a character unlike any. He was probably the most funny, fascinating character. He grew up in Cleveland, Tennessee. He always wanted. He was one of those who said it was never about the money, and yet he always coveted the Beverly Hillbillies mansion, right? And now he's built it on top of the hill in Cleveland, Tennessee. He was just always this achiever. Whatever he did, one year he was collecting Christmas trees, and he wanted in the front yard of his home. And I'm surprised his parents allowed it, but after Christmas was over, he would go and grab everybody's live Christmas tree and pile them up. And so I thought, okay, well, so did they pay you to take the tree away? No. So it wasn't a business enterprise. Were you going to do the largest bonfire that the town had ever seen? No, that would have been against the law, particularly since he lived in town and not out on some state or wasn't piling up Christmas trees on the pasture. No, he put up handmade thermometer out there. He showed me a picture of it so that he could show that every year he had collected more Christmas trees than the year before. Now he'd pile them all up, and then he'd have to haul them all off at a certain period. But for him, it was just about that accomplishment of proving that every year he could pile up more Christmas trees than he did the year before. And I thought that was very indicative of what you heard almost across all of these individuals. Yes, sir. What I talked about today, the power of perfect pitch. Because today, what do? My company is a holding company for 75 businesses in America. It ranges from $2.5 billion automotive parts supplier in Detroit, 12,000 workers, 40 plants in 15 countries, to Stila Cosmetics, to MD Helicopters, to Spiegel Catalogs. And so, I always say the most fascinating thing about my life today is that one day I'm building helicopters, and the next day I'm figuring out what color of lip gloss women are going to wear in 2015. It's that kind of disparity. But what I spend most of my time doing is finding the right talent to turn around these companies, because we buy distressed companies that either out of bankruptcy or on the brink of liquidation when nobody else wants them. We are the buyer of last resort usually. And it's a bit of my partner Lynn Tilton's savior syndrome. Some of these we probably shouldn't have saved, but we do. And so once we have them, then what do we have to do? We have to make certain we put the right people in with the right perfect pitch for that particular company. So where we get the perfect pitch right, where we found the right leader with the perfect pitch for that company, we get a turnaround. And where we don't, we don't. So, just like I was saying that for me personally, Esquire was my perfect pitch. Worth was my perfect pitch in many ways. I think my perfect pitch is with people, being a pretty good judge of who's going to be right for a particular company. We have a pretty good track record so far. We don't get them all right, but we've only liquidated one company in the last 7 years, and 75 currently in the portfolio. So that's the most important lesson I learned, and it's one that I try to practice every day. And I'm always sizing it up. I try to size it up with my kids when I guess instinctively I sort of knew this about my oldest son who gets his PhD at Johns Hopkins tomorrow, is that, he came out of the womb, marching like a soldier. He never met a war he didn't like. He always loved military history. And, and he'll never be the richest man in town, but he'll be the richest person at the university, where he ultimately teaches in sensibility, because he's doing exactly what he should be doing. He is practicing his perfect pitch. And whether it's, success is defined in many ways, right? I defined it in The Richest Man in Town, principally financially. But as Carl Icahn said to me, if you're a world-class cellist, reaching Carnegie Hall is being your personal richest man in town. So I think that's what we want for everybody, right? We want them to find their perfect pitch and then practice it. Yes, sir.
I'm fascinated by the lack of goal setting. That's the most fascinating thing that you mentioned to me. Right. You've been successful. Are you a goal setter or a plotter?
I think I am a plotter. I thought through this while I was researching and writing this book, and I remember drawing when I was a kid a house with big tall columns. And then I was reminded that when I was 4 years old, my parents had built the house on the hill with the tall columns, and it had burned 6 months after they built it. And then they built back a low-slung 50s, well, that wasn't the 50s, but a 50s-like ranch house because they'd built their dream house. It was gone. They didn't want to go through it again. And I always thought that was kind of sad. So I did want the house with the big columns, I guess, though I never really said, I don't remember saying to anybody or writing down, my goal is to have the house on the hill with the big tall columns. I got it one day. But I really don't, I certainly didn't set out to be the publisher of Esquire magazine. I would have never dreamt that was even possible. But it happened.
Success begets success. I mean, you just kind of built on one after the other.
Yeah. It certainly makes the next one easier because people believe in you more, right? I mean, and it happens on Wall Street all the time. I mean, if you've got a good fund and it's performing, you can raise another fund. And if you don't, you really can't. And, the same is true, I think, in Fortune 500 companies. If you've had a major failure, it's tough to get a job with another Fortune 500 company. Now, in my world of distressed companies, we're right the opposite. We say if you haven't sat in the corner office and struggled to make payroll, then don't come knocking on our door because, what we do is really hard. You're not going to be bubble wrapped by great resources. So your great resources have to come from here. And you have to be able to sort of walk in the darkness one foot in front of the other, believing one day you're going to see the light, right? So I think it depends on your industry and where you are. So in my world today, we're looking for people who have struggled, who have failed, who've walked the walk through a bankruptcy perhaps, and come out the other end. But I think it really does depend on the industry. In the publishing business, as an example, it was pretty easy for me to raise money to start Worth Magazine after Esquire. So, but yeah, I think it helps. There's no doubt about it. Yes, sir.
Did you have the money to buy Esquire? Did you have to raise that? You said it was we bought it.
Yeah, I had a little money at that point. That was my second job. And I was a traveling salesman. My first job was right out of college. My first job, actually, right out of college was, because I was a journalism major, I went to work for the Atlanta Journal and Constitution. And I was kind of all excited about being a newspaper man. And I was covering City Hall and having a ball and writing about all sorts of robberies and murder, and that was kind of fun. And then they put me on the society desk. And they said, you know what, you dress pretty well. The ladies who lunch will like to have lunch with you and tell you their secrets. Well, I decided that was not what I wanted to do with my career. So I left the newspaper world and I joined a little paper company in the South and I sold paper products from college to college, notebooks and engineering pads. And in the process of that, I sold well, made a lot of money, put it all away because I was traveling all the time. So every meal was paid for. It was like everything went into my pocket. So I had a little money by the time Esquire came around. And of course, we borrowed some as well. It was, in the old days, we borrowed from the guy who was trying to get rid of the magazine at the time, who had not been able to turn it around. So we did have to, so he became, basically, he was able to turn that debt into equity, and he won as well once we sold to the Hearst Corporation. Yes, sir.
So Randy, why do you think that 59% of people believe that the American dream is dead? And what do you think needs to change in our country?
Such a good question. I don't know why people are so negative right now. And as I said, particularly as the market is doing so well, I think what's happening is that we're seeing such a disparity. I've written about the top 1% for a long time, and that worries me a little bit because the top 1% of the demographic pyramid controls 40% of the wealth in this country. Top 10% controls over 70%. So the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, I think, is a big issue here. And I sort of struggle with that as a have. And so what do? Well, you try to do what I do every day. You try to save a business and save some jobs. And then you feel like, okay, maybe that's the best philanthropy that I can possibly do for that town. And when you see us step into a town like Gorham, New Hampshire, where the grocery stores were shuttered and the coffee shops out of business, and put 250 50-year-old men back to work, and see the change in a town 6 months later, it's dramatic. So, and then you, in an ideal world, I try to be philanthropic. But I think that those who have been more fortunate, have a much greater responsibility to do more of that. In fact, the way I ended up in the private equity business was a total curveball in my career that I did not expect. And I say I've got a minute, 48 seconds. But I was working on a television show that was an outgrowth of The Richest Man in Town. And the idea for the show was that we would drop into Chattanooga, Tennessee, or Bakersfield, California. We would find a distressed business, one that was on the brink of liquidation or bankruptcy, and then we would convince the richest man in town to save that business. Use his cash, his creativity, his connections, whatever it took, his advice to help save that company, keep those people gainfully employed, because there's a multiplier effect of 6. So my idea was, one person can't do it all, but if we could inspire other wealthy individuals to save just one company in this country, what effect would that have? We wouldn't any longer have 26 million people unemployed. Now, I couldn't pull it off, but I did meet, I never got it done, but I did meet Lynn Tilton in the process, one of the 5 self-made female billionaires in the country, whom I did not meet when I was writing the book. But when I took the story or the idea to Hollywood to sell it, it was the easiest sell of my life. 3 networks, I saw 3 networks, and all 3 networks wanted to do the show. Because this was 2009. And you know what the story was like with unemployment in 2009. And so I met her, and we teamed up, and now we do this on a pretty broad scale. But I still believe that if we could get people to do that, that would change things. Because joblessness is the big issue in this country. I mean, both parties talk about it all the time. But we put America back to work. We use technology to bring more manufacturing jobs back to the United States so that, if you sell it here, you got to manufacture it here. I think that'd go a long way. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. It was a pleasure being with you.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you so
you,
much.
Eric.
We're grateful for you coming. A little gift for you.
Oh, aren't you
Something
kind?
for Lane. Congratulations on your son.
Oh, thank you so much.
How about another round of applause for Randy Jones? That was fabulous. So I'm a little sad coming to the end of our second day here, and one day left to go. I'm going to take you through a little Ben Franklin inspiration. Got another quote for you here. Anybody know what this thing is? That is a lightning rod. That is correct. Ben Franklin sees that 50% of all homeowners lose their house to lightning or fire caused by lightning. And he sets about figuring out, how am I going to do this? And he invents the lightning rod. And as entrepreneurs, I'm encouraging you to think that same way. What can we do to help people? Randy certainly said in his closing remarks that there's certainly ways that we can help other people. Just wanted to turn you on to a very interesting list. Here's a guy, Ben Franklin, just like us. And look at all the stuff that he invented. And this is just a short list that I pulled down. Electricity, kind of a big one. Bifocals, lightning rod, Franklin stove. How many of those things do you think Ben Franklin patented in order to protect his intellectual property? None is exactly the answer. It's amazing. He felt that his work was going to give back to people. And all of these things were going to increase the quality of life amongst all people around the world, and not just in the colonies or in the United States, all over the world. And a lot of these things that you see here today still remain as things that protect us. In fact, if on our walk that we're about to have down to the Constitution Center, you're going to see a lot of these things like lightning rods and the busybody. Anybody know what a busybody is? It's right. It's a triple mirror. When Ben Franklin invented the original cell phone screen. And what I mean by that is, when you pick up your phone and someone's calling you and you're like, maybe I'll let it go to voicemail. The busybody is a little mirror that you installed on the second floor of your house, and you could look out to see who was at your front door, and if you didn't feel like answering the door, they wouldn't know that you saw that. You'll see a couple of those as we're walking. So he invented all these things, and not only things that he invented that were physical things, but also the organization like the University of Pennsylvania, the streets department I told you about earlier, the first free library, fire department, post office, hospital, and so forth. And sometimes when I'm a little tired at the end of the day and I've thought I've done my share of entrepreneurial activity, sometimes I think about, what would this guy do? He's out there inventing new stuff. Maybe I can give a little bit more extra effort. So I encourage you guys to think that way as well. So let's talk about tomorrow. Like I said earlier today, it's kind of the same rhythm as today. Great general session in the morning. Going to have some breakouts in the middle of the day. Like I said, some new options for you to check out as well. In the afternoon, we'll have our final general session. And then our evening event tonight is a special concert. It's actually going to be in this room. We're going to end our general session, go out there for a fabulous beer bash sponsored by Susquehanna Brewing Company. And while we're all out there socializing, relaxing, and celebrating the end of our concert, they're going to flip this room over and we're going to have a private concert by the Hooters. Hooters are a Philly band. Talk about staying power. They've been on the road consistently for 33 years. And they're not old guys. They're still rockers. But it's going to be a private concert just for us. Is Everett Katzen in the room? Everett? If Everett's here, he was the connection. There he is, standing up in the back. He hooked that all up. Give Everett a hug when you see him, because it's going to be a fabulous show. Once again, all this information is available at the mobile app, little printouts by the registration desk, and once again, all your folks in the orange shirts can help you out as well. Did you know that we had 38 people that did the Rocky Run this morning, even though it was a little hot and humid, and we got some great pictures. I don't know if you caught those pictures when you came in this morning, but there was a slideshow running of all those people, and we had about a dozen people doing some rooftop yoga. I thought it would be great, rooftop yoga with the sun coming up over the city. And when I went up there at 6 a.m. to check out what was going on, you couldn't see a thing because of all the fog. And then someone came out and said, oh no, the fog, it was very nice, very yoga-like. They gave us a little tranquility. So I'll take credit for that, of course. If you want to do it again, if you did the run today, do yoga tomorrow. You want to run again, that's great. If you didn't do anything because you were hungover, try one of them tomorrow morning. No need to sign up. 6 a.m. in the lobby or 6 a.m. on the roof. It's your choice. Next, of course, we have our industry meetups, and it actually worked really well this morning. People were seeking out colleagues in their individual meetings, making friends, talking biz, and having a little bacon and eggs. So once again, there's 15 tables out there. Where's the energy table? We missed that this morning. Sorry about that. There was one person who was looking for friends, but we didn't have the sign. We'll have that for you tomorrow morning as well. But give it a shot. You know what? Coming to NERV or any kind of EO university is a great chance to meet other entrepreneurs just like yourself, do a little experience sharing, hopefully make a few bucks together. So tomorrow morning we have Mike Maddock. Is Mike in the audience? I saw him earlier today. Mike, you around? Mike is from EO Chicago. He's a total rock star, and he's going to come to us in our morning session to give us a little energy, even if we're feeling a little down from the night before, perhaps a bit tired from staying out late. And then one of my personal favorites, Rudy Carson, is going to close it up tomorrow. He's the guy that sold his company for $1 billion. He is one of the founding members of Philadelphia EO chapter. I thought that would be apropos that he would join us for our closing session as well. So now we're going to go down to the National Constitution Center. Everybody check your watch. What we're going to do is meet exactly at 6 o'clock down in the lobby. We have a 6-block walk to go from 12th Street, where we're located now, down to 6th Street, 6th and Market. We're at 12th and Market now. And the Constitution Center is located on Independence Mall, which is where you'll also find Independence Hall, the Liberty Bell, and a lot of other cool historic things as well. Now, I got to give one caveat. Weather's a little bit challenging, so I need some positive energy to make those clouds go away so we can have a nice dry walk on our 6 blocks. Should it be a little moist, When we go outside, we have options. The hotel has a bunch of umbrellas at the front desk if you're lucky enough to get there early and grab one. You could certainly jump in a cab right out front and go the $5 ride down 6 blocks. You can get together with other EOers and make that affordable. Of course, you can call an Uber, one of our sponsors. I'm sure they would appreciate it. It'll probably be a pretty cheap Uber ride as well. Or if you're like me, you can go down the block, 6 blocks, and see what happens. Along the way, at 7th and Market, just before we get there, you're going to pass the Declaration House. Declaration House is on the corner of 7th and Market, and if you look up to the 2nd floor, that's where Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, so get a little bit of that history as well. Of course, after our, oh, sorry, I'm supposed to show you the map here. So it's only 6 blocks. We're at 12th, and we're going to go down from number 2 on the map to number 4 on the map. As you can see, it's exactly 6 blocks, one straight shot down Market Street. Like I said, you could call for an Uber. If you're not Uber users, get started now. I hope they have it in your city. It's the most fabulous service. If you haven't used Uber, use Nerve 2014. Save $20 off your first ride. That'd be a good opportunity if it's raining a little bit to sign up, get the app, and take a little ride on Uber, on them, of course, for the first ride. And then after hours, we're going to repeat the pub crawl we did last night. We had a blast. We can go to these 4 options. Someone asked me, well, how do I know how to get to all 4? All 4 are located within 100 feet of one another. They're all clustered together. Now, if you've had too many beers, I can't help you with the 100-foot journey. You're going to have to figure that out yourself. But literally on Drury Street, which is this cute little street about a block and a half from here, you'll find all 4 of these bars. And once again, showing your EO badge gets you a discount, and that would obviously save a little bit of coin. So we gave our partners a hug, and that's been working great. Thank you for participating. But wait, there's more. Some of our partners are really giving away some nice, tasty prizes. So I want you to go by their tables and drop your business card in or make connections with them. For example, M&T Bank is giving away a $150 gift card to the Capitol Grill. CountingDepartment.com is giving away a $300 Bose noise-canceling headphone set, and they wrote here, and extra hugs. Office Depot, one of our global partners, $100 Office Depot gift card, and an Eagles helmet signed by Dick Vermeil. If you had a good time last night, that'll be a nice keepsake. And by the way, Advantage Media Group is giving away books. That's what they do, help authors and speakers like today, so you get a lot of interesting books there as well. If you check out the marketplace, by the way, did you guys get some of those Philly soft pretzels? In the marketplace, we had both the regular mustard and the Dijon for our out-of-town guests. Yellow mustard's the way to go if you're a Philly guy. If you go in there, Brinker Simpson, one of our marketplace, is giving away a raffle for a Canon PowerShot digital camera. The GW Exhibits booth just inside the marketplace is doing an interactive game for a chance to win a shirt or a Starbucks gift card. Pipeline Deal has t-shirts and coffee mugs. DAS has roller bags, and 7 Stage Advisors are giving away their book, The 7 Stages of Small Business Success. So once again, good opportunities to get free stuff and meet some really cool people that can help you with your business. Also, don't forget to hug people, and don't forget to give Katie a yo Katie and a high five as well. So that's what we got. We're now going to take a little break, and once again, we're going to meet at 6 o'clock in the lobby. Lobby is the bar area where the Bank and Bourbon is. Like I said, make preparations in case it's a little moist. We'll see you down there at 6 o'clock.